Not a baby, yes you are. My stars not focused. Chapter 4. Precursor present curses. Summary. Danny takes a well-deserved nap, and the bad fam are pissed at the precursors. Either something went wrong with the transmission, or he was going to be stuck on his planet for 99,999 hours. Both options didn't bode well for him, but one was clearly better than the other. Agents, how long was 99,999 hours? With a number that big, he was looking at spending around 10 years waiting for a rescue team to show up and help them. If everyone wasn't dead by that point, they'd probably have built a super cool society with a deep-sea base and nuclear power that they'd have to give up. In 10 years, he would have figured out what the heck was going on with him and brought them home himself. Though 10 years would give him an excuse for why he was still around the same age he was when he left. Wiped the PDA's data beyond recovery, blamed the most annoying creature or planet as what shrank him, and refused to elaborate any further. A transmission error was more likely than his brilliant, hypothetical scenario. When their spaceship as big as the Aurora crashed, there was bound to be some interference. Whether that interference be artificial or not was still unclear, much to his dismay. At least he had a scanner. That was a big step for him in his progression. A lot of the actual helpful blueprints were corrupted in the crash, and supposedly the scanner could help recover them. Scanning fragments of scavenged tech would be the quickest way of recovery, all things considered. Destroyed beacons, singed sea gliders, and trash cans were scattered all throughout the shallows, pollution likely reaching farther than what he'd explored. With a crash this big, damage likely extended much farther than what was visible to him. Not only did the ship crush who knows how many creatures and plants, the regular and radioactive pollution would screw over future generations of fish. It was the intergalactic equivalent of a catastrophic oil spill, and he was an unwilling participant in it. Something deep inside him ached at the thought of him being a participant in a planet's destruction. Chunks of broken spaceship were bad enough for the environment on its own. Batteries, trash, fuel, and hundreds of pounds of man-made resources that take hundreds, if not thousands of years to decompose. Every scrap of metal, every piece of plastic trash, no matter the size, was something to poison, choke, or kill the local wildlife. Sam would be furious. This wasn't a case of natural food shortage or extreme weather. This could very well be an extinction event. Nuclear power was the default for Altera's larger ships, and if it wasn't already, the Aurora was soon to start leaking radiation all over the place. This was one of the few life-bearing planets humanity discovered. Hundreds upon hundreds of planets have been discovered within humanity's years of space exploration, but life existing without human intervention was still rare. Metal, rock, and glass were what were all that were usually brought back in the beginning. As humanity's technology advanced, they went farther into space, with more habitable planets being discovered and an uptick in thriving alien life. There was always a continuous stream of new discoveries in their universe, alien flora and fauna being discovered as often as they went extinct. Even so, it'd be a cold day in hell before he shared responsibility for any aliens going extinct. Genetic mutation, birth defects, and massive mounds of death were the first things that came to mind when radiation was brought into the picture. Radiation was the biggest issue so far. The melted spaceship could be recycled, no matter what Altera's stupid rules told him he could and couldn't do. Trusting a corporation to clean up their own messes was like asking a toddler to clean up their toys. It would only lead to a conniption fit and a half-assed job. It was unclear how long he was going to be here, and if, when he met up with the other survivors, the need for materials would only increase as time went on. Scanning and salvaging would have to wait until the next morning. Darkness shrouded the ocean outside his life pod, making it twice as dangerous to be out there, tearing wrecks apart. Bioluminescence wasn't a skill he could put on his resume just yet, nor was it any kind of night vision. It would be both dangerous and annoying to swim around aimlessly in the dark when he had a perfectly good life pod he could relax in. Standing in the safety of his life pod, then he ran a scanner up and down his body, the tech lighting him up a brilliant blue. Performing self-scan. Vital signs follow continuous pattern, no adverse effects identified. Detecting tracing amounts of foreign bacteria. Continuing to monitor. The PDA chimed, and if Danny were an actual infant, like the stupid tablet insisted he was, he wouldn't have understood a word of those sentences. But since he wasn't a baby, he could properly understand that there were alien germs in his body that really shouldn't be there. Yeah, that seemed like a problem, but it wasn't the reason his powers were short-circuiting. Before they even entered the atmosphere, his powers were going wonky. Everything felt the same as it did before he came in contact with this foreign bacteria. There were no physical symptoms to complain about, so maybe it was just his PDA's way of warning him he was coming down with an alien cold. Whatever it was. Then he bet $50 the metal muncher was what gave it to him. The creature had a face that screamed, "Hey, look at me! I have all the diseases!" Now he was no marine biologist. But scrap metal and electrical wire didn't exactly seem like the healthiest snack to chew on. Although with the resemblance it had to crocodiles back home, one could only wonder if it swallowed metal to help with digestion. Jagged teeth, like the ones on the metal muncher, weren't exactly suitable for grinding up food. Finding out the metal muncher's stomach was full of rocks would be the least surprising thing that's happened today. Metal Savage from the Aurora was way too big to work as a stomach stone, so it was more likely the creature just liked chewing on metal. It seemed just as interested in the titanium deposits as it was with the salvage, so maybe it was a natural way to file down or sharpen their teeth. Hopefully, the metal muncher were smart enough to avoid chewing on wires that were actively sparking. Opening a note function on his PDA, then he began scribbling down everything he'd learned from his encounter with the metal muncher. Easily distracted, aggressive, territorial? Deciding everything he'd seen today was their normal, everyday behavior would be stupid. There were new variables in the creature's environment that could impact its behavior. Continued observation would be helpful, as would scanning the animal in the morning. If Danny was going to be stranded on an alien planet, you bet your ass he's going to be studying the local wildlife while he's here. A proper sleep schedule is imperative to the physical and psychological development of young children. A chime played on his PDA, closing the notes app without any warning. A repetitive string of overtook his screen, making it impossible for him to navigate through the applications. Cheeks burning, then he turned the thing off and on again, stomping with a huff when the same thing happened when it booted up again. Taking a deep breath, Danny stalked over to the storage unit. It was the only flat surface in the life pod he could lay down on, and one could only pray to the agents that the lid wouldn't cave under him. Sleeping on the floor was out of the question. Biohazard goo coated the floor, still liquid enough to slosh around with the arithmetic motion of the sea. Naturally, due to preferences, Danny decided to curl up on a surface that didn't have his melted organs on it. Slithering through a barren seabed that once flourished as well as one could in a dying ocean, mourning the lives that were lost today. He'd failed all over again. His youngest had been the one to see the Precursor's building raise into the sky this time. A blast strong enough to shake the island that it was built on shot out into the sky. They'd expected something to crash into the water soon after, but what they hadn't expected was the size of what hit the waters. Miles of seafloor was torn up, and thousands of animals were dead. Jason said it was iconic. Even after the Precursors wiped themselves out, they still found ways to destroy the planet. Bruce thought it was just cruel. It was by sheer stroke of luck that none of his kids had been close to the Reaper's breeding ground at the time of impact. All of them managed to remain relatively unharmed when the flames and giant pieces of rubble fell from the sky. Surviving Reapers flocked to the site of the impact, shielded unseen through the cloud of upturned sand and rubble. It wasn't until they caught a Reaper with a familiar-looking creature in his mandibles, red blood spilling into the waters, as it once had a decade ago, that they realized it was happening again. Nearly all who they'd found near the impact site had been unresponsive, jarred or mangled, with their organs strewn out through the sea. In the clutches of the predators now cycling the site, dying in their arms, no matter how quickly or carefully they managed to pry them from the brutal maw of the Reapers. Within minutes of the impact, they'd already had a death count in the dozens. It was horrific. Little bodies, so much like his and his children's more vulnerable forms. Dual claws of younglings that had not yet grown old enough to hunt for themselves. Worst of all was looking into their dying eyes and seeing the agony and confusion of a sentient creature facing a brutal death just as their lives had begun. But that was the death count before the others landed. Eggs with metal shells and odd patterning landed all throughout the crater, some even landing in the cold darkness of the void where they couldn't be retrieved. Their landings had been much gentler than the initial impact. Immediately, the little ones began crawling out of their shells, confused and scared, physically weak. It wasn't common for the Precursors to deform the unborn, kidnapping and experimenting on children who lived and died in agony. Malformities ran rampant in this batch of younglings. Instead of soft faces and the vibrant, expressive eyes they'd come to associate with these children, there were pitch-black, featureless heads, smoother than sandstone, but solid as titanium. There were points when a child that looked perfectly healthy would go limp for seemingly no reason, and never move again. A speed-up gestation period was known to cause problems, let alone a hatching that was induced by precursor technology. As much as it killed him to admit, these younglings, while more abundant, were sicklier than the small batch of 3 that fallen years ago. Most, if not all, the healthier young ones died from the elements before they could reach them. It was devastating for Dick to find the youngling he'd been guarding in his territory covered in the luminescent cysts that foreshadowed a certain death. The children got scared when they tried to protect them, and when these children got scared, they had a tendency to die from it. Every single death felt like a personal failure. It's like nothing they could do would ever stop the hurt that the Precursors continued to cause 1,000 years after their extinction. "Hey, B," Dick's voice echoed in his mind, a reassuring reminder that his son was safe and close enough to contact them. However, the emotions that came in with his son's words were anything but reassuring. Stomach filling with dread, He settled on the seabed, just preparing himself for devastating news. Will searched the entire crater. None of them survived. A wave of grief hit him like a tsunami when Dick's words sunk in. Not the entire crater. There's still the one that landed in the shallows, Tim chimed in. We watched that egg for 3 hours and nothing crawled out of it. Steph groaned, and Bruce could almost hear the dramatic way his daughter threw herself into the sand. Plus it was smoking and smelled of rot, Duke added somberly, slowly gliding through the impact site by his side. Geez, none of them even survived long enough to start building this time, Dick exclaimed, a mournful edge in his usually cheerful tone. Tuff, pitiful. Damien finally decided to chime in, disappointment clear in the juvenile's voice. Who is pitiful? The babies who died today, or the precursors who set them up for death? Jason questioned, a dangerous edge seeping into the bond. I think it's obvious who I was talking about, Todd, Damien spat. Considering how obsessed you are with what the last group created, no, it's not obvious, Demon Spawn. Jason sneered. Guys, Dick snapped. Arguing with each other isn't help. Okay, and it sure as lava zone is hot isn't going to make you feel better for long. Murmurs of agreement rang throughout the bond. One of us should still keep an eye on the egg in the shallows. Bruce clutched a piece of metal in pinch-black claws, gills flaring as he swam underneath an egg floating upside down on the ocean's surface. Maybe they're just late bloomers. Maybe. I guess it's possible. Not likely. Tuff. If it's already rotten, getting our hopes up is pointless. Damien added to the chorus of replies. Try saying that when we have new baby siblings swimming around. Dick beamed. I will not, because it isn't going to happen. His youngest argued pointedly. Someone's worried they won't be the groupie of the family anymore. They cooed, much to Damien's dismay and everyone else's entertainment. I'm not. Damien snapped, his voice louder than Dick's, despite him being the farthest from the impact zone. If anything, I'd be glad someone else would be the victim of you people's constant smothering. Damien spat, his words lacking any true venom. Whatever you say, kiddo. Shut up, Grayson. Laughter rang out through the bond, followed by teasing and cooing. A reminder that despite everything, Bruce still had living children, and he hoped it would stay that way long after he passed. And that was the chapter! I'm happy that this one is not as long, probably also not as short. It's a good 30 minutes as I'm looking at it now, like the recording time. But yeah, this is the chapter. That was the chapter. I'm happy it's over, even though I like reading and all that. But God, there are some difficult words in there. Anyways, if you liked the video, leave a like, and if you like my videos in general, feel free to subscribe and activate the bell, I guess, and share the video. Otherwise, I make Podfic commissions, so if you have a Podfic that you want me to read, you can commission me over Discord or Tumblr. Infos to that are in the channel description or on the screen. If you do commission me, you get early access to my Discord server. We have finally the bats appearing! And yes, they're sea creatures this time. Sea creatures. I thought they were some kind of leviathans, but now that I'm rereading the story, I'm not quite sure what they are anymore. So we will see how it continues, I guess. And naturally, in this nice fic, there are recording highlights. Wait, I don't know if that made sense, but here you go. 99,999. Sorry. For if everyone wasn't dead by they'd probably have built a super cool though 10 years would give him an excuse for why he was still around. I'm confused, but A. Whether that interference be artificial or not was still unclear, much to his dismay. What? Synced? Sea gliders? Is it synced? I think it's supposed to be synced.
Singed.
Okay, no, it is not synced. It's singed. Apparently. Pollution likely reaching far. Not only did this was one of the few life-bearing This was one of the few life-bearing planets with more habitable plants being discovered. Oh, planets, not plants. It would only lead to a
Conniption.
It would only lead to a what's conniption? Conniption, okay. And when darkness shrouded the ocean once Fuck. This is more challenging, I swear. But strange enough, shorter than some other fics.
Bioluminescence.
The leading tracing amount. Detecting. Sorry. Now he was no marine biologist, but although with the reasonable a proper sleep schedule is imperative. Overtook of still liquid enough to slosh around. Checking.
Arithmetic.
Surviving reapers flocked to the slide with a familiar looking creature looking creature locked in its mandibles. Yeah. Nearly all who'd found near the impact. With their organs strewn. The unborn, the smoother than headstone. No, sand. Smooth. A speed up gestation. Okay, I think I know why I stopped this fic for a second, because there's so many goddamn words that I don't know how to pronounce.
Gestation. That
means pregnant? Why didn't they just use pregnant? You know what? It's fine. Fuck. There we go again.
Cysts.
Cysts. Every single death felt like a familiar. Jeez, none of them even survived long enough to start building this time. Dick exclaimed, a mouthful edge. Oh, that's exclaimed. Considering how obsessed you are with what the last group created, considering how obsessed you were, it's almost done. Okay. And as sure as the lava zone is hot, that is a fucking strange sentence. Murmurs. Maybe they're just late boomers. Damien added to the Aw, someone's worried they won't be the... someone's worried they won't be the group... Oh, fuck. Enjoy the rest of your time, and see you next time.